So the abstract I presented was the datopotamab deruxtecan arm of I-SPY 2.2, which is kind of a complex neoadjuvant chemotherapy trial for patients with high risk stage 2 to 3 breast cancer. It's looking at neoadjuvant therapies and trying to kind of figure out what are the novel things we can do in the neoadjuvant setting to help patients hopefully have a higher likelihood of cure, potentially with less toxicity. So the way the study works is that there's an investigational block of treatment that patients go on first. So that can be one drug or a drug combination. In the case of the data I presented yesterday or Friday, it was datopotamab deruxtecan given once IV every 3 weeks for 4 treatments. If patients do very well on that, we monitor them with blood tests, serial MRIs throughout that 12-week treatment block, and then a biopsy at the end of the treatment block. And if they do well enough with regards to all those tests, helping us think they might have gotten a complete response from just the investigational drugs, then they can actually bypass more traditional chemotherapy and go to surgery after just those 4 treatments. And if enough patients do that in a particular arm, then that investigational treatment can what we call graduate, meaning go on to further phase 3 study. For example, pembrolizumab actually did that as part of the I-SPY trial years ago, and then went on to be studied in Keynote 355 and also in Keynote 522 to become part of the standard of care. But if patients don't get to a complete response or don't get to a predicted complete response with those first treatments, then they go on to more traditional therapy. There's a second block that's a taxane-based chemotherapy for 12 weeks. And then the third block is traditional AC. Similarly to what happens in Block A, though, with the investigational treatment, if a patient has a good response after Block B, they're able to go to surgery after that and bypass Block C, which is the adriamycin-based therapy. So it's kind of complicated. It's a little easier to explain with slides, but basically the idea is that you're personalizing treatment a little bit more, kind of getting responses in real time, and therefore getting patients the drugs that they need, but hopefully not over-treating them. So that was the basis of this trial, and this is there are many different drugs being studied as part of I-SPY 2.2, but this was one of the first arms of the study to fully enroll and is the first one to report out. So we reported out on 103 patients that were enrolled over the course of 10 months on this study. These patients all received datopotamab once every 3 weeks for 4 cycles. We reported out just on the results of Block A, so we don't yet have the data on everyone who went through Block B and C. But we know that of the patients, the 103 patients that started, 32% actually, 33 of the 103 patients were able to go straight to surgery after that first 12 weeks of treatment. So 4 cycles of datopotamab, they went straight to surgery, which is really pretty exciting. But the way the statistics work out, because you have to meet a certain threshold that's actually fairly high in certain subgroups to graduate to further study, statistically the drug did not meet criteria to go on to be studied further in a phase 3 trial on its own. What I would say is, though, it was still very exciting. It was extremely well tolerated, and there's a lot of excitement about the potential for combining datopotamab with other drugs, potentially in the neoadjuvant space. So datopotamab plus durvalumab is another arm of I-SPY 2.2 that my colleague, Dr. Shatsky, will be reporting on tomorrow. Definitely encourage people to look at and watch that presentation. And there's some studies ongoing, such as TROPION-Breast04, which will look at a longer duration of datopotamab deruxtecan plus durvalumab in the neoadjuvant space. So I think there's definitely more to come from this drug, but those were the results of the data arm of I-SPY 2.2. Yeah, I think the impact of the trial in clinic we've somewhat already seen. I-SPY 2.2 is sort of the newest iteration of the trial, but the trial began with I-SPY 2, which started in 2010, and actually there have been almost 24 agents studied now, a number of which have graduated to further study, and some, like pembrolizumab, have actually changed the standard of care in the space, in some spaces, like with triple-negative breast cancer. So my hope is that the trial will continue to have impact in that way. There are already new agents being studied in Block A and new arms of that study being enrolled. So the trial continues to have a lot of uptake, and I think that there will be future potential arms of the study as well that will potentially change the standard of care.